Okay, so let's picture this. Imagine democracy is a hero that's fresh off these epic, world-changing victories in the 20th century. I mean, it defeated fascism, it outlasted communism, it was the undisputed champ. But now, it's stepping into a new century, and it's facing a world that it actually helped create. A world that is way faster, way more complex, and maybe a lot more dangerous than anything it's ever seen before. To really set the stage for this, we gotta go way back to an ancient fable. It's a simple story, but it's incredibly powerful. You have a horse, and it wants to defeat its rival, the stag. So it goes to a hunter and asks for help. The hunter agrees, but says, okay, but you have to let me put on this saddle, this bit, and this spur. The horse agrees, they defeat the stag, but then the horse realizes its mistake. It has lost its freedom forever. The hunter, now in total control, has absolutely no reason to ever let it go. And that fable brings us right to the heart of the matter, to the one question that hangs over this entire story. In the middle of a heated political fight, to get that win, to beat our rivals, what are we, you and I, willing to sacrifice? That's the dilemma our hero is facing right now. So, like any good hero's journey, our story begins in the ordinary world. And for democracy, this was a time of just incredible confidence. It was an era where it really felt like the great epic struggles of history were finally over and done with. You can almost see the victory lap on this timeline, can't you? 1945, fascism is just in ruins. For the next few decades, liberal democracies are popping up all over the globe. And then the grand finale, 1991, the Soviet Union collapses. The great enemy of the 20th century was just gone. It honestly felt like history was moving in one clear, unstoppable direction. And this led to what we can call the great illusion of victory. There was this really powerful idea from thinkers like Francis Fukuyama that we had reached the end of history. Now, that didn't mean events would just stop happening. It meant the big questions, like how we should organize ourselves as a society, had all been answered. Our hero, democracy, thought the journey was complete. But really, a brand new one was just beginning. And this, right here, is where the plot thickens. Because the very success of our hero helped create a brand new world, one that was filled with all these unfamiliar challenges and totally new kinds of villains. This was democracy's call to adventure, an adventure it never saw coming. So the first antagonist wasn't a country, it wasn't an ideology, it was a whole new economic system. Shoshana Zuboff calls it surveillance capitalism. It's a system that takes our private experiences, our clicks, our conversations, turns it all into data, and then uses that data to predict and even shape what we do next, all for someone else's profit. This was a completely new kind of power. The second antagonist was a bit more familiar, but it had a serious 21st century upgrade. You see, authoritarian states, especially China, weren't just fading into the history books. Nope, they were adapting. They started using technology to build this turnkey model of digital control. It's like an autocracy in a box that other dictators could just order up and install, maybe even with a maintenance agreement. So you can see the new battlefield taking shape. And it wasn't defined by tanks or armies. It was defined by the nonstop fire hose of information on social media, by growing anxiety about the economy, the rise of populist anger, and these huge global crises that seemed to demand decisions faster than democracy was ever designed to make them. Faced with this dizzying new world, our hero, well, it hesitated. This is that classic refusal of the call part of the story. Democratic societies kept trying to use their old 20th century tools to fight these new 21st century battles, and the unwritten rules, the things that quietly held the whole system together, they started to crack. You can see the mismatch right here. On one side, you have democracy's traditional strengths. It's careful, it's deliberate, it's based on rights and being accountable to the people. But on the other side, you've got this new model of authoritarianism. It's incredibly fast, it's centralized, and it is built for one thing: control. The tension is obvious. Suddenly, democracy's careful slowness started to look like a really critical weakness. Now, to understand how things started to break down, we have to look at two critical unwritten rules. Stephen Levitsky and Daniel Zablat call them the soft guardrails of democracy. The first one is mutual toleration. It's this simple but absolutely profound idea that we see our political opponents as legitimate rivals, not as mortal enemies who are trying to destroy the country. The second guardrail is called institutional forbearance. This one's a little more subtle. It's basically the idea of just because you can do something doesn't mean you should. It's all about restraint. It's about not using every single legal power you have to crush your opponent, because if you do that, you violate the spirit of the system and just escalate the conflict into all-out war. And this analogy just illustrates the point perfectly. Politics is kind of like a pickup basketball game. It needs these unwritten rules to even work. Of course you play to win. You play hard. But if you start treating it like a street fight, fouling on every single play, well, pretty soon nobody's going to want to play anymore, and the game itself just completely falls apart. When toleration and forbearance disappear, politics stops being a game, and it starts being a war. And all of this leads our hero to its darkest moment, the ordeal. The biggest threat isn't from some outside enemy anymore. The real battle is now internal. It's a fight against decay and fragmentation from the inside out. This idea, based on Yasha Monk's work, shows the two main ways that liberal democracy can just fracture. It can split into illiberal democracy, that's where the majority gets to rule but completely ignores the rights of minorities. Or it can become undemocratic liberalism, where rights are protected by a group of elites, but the will of the people is ignored. Either way, you're left with a broken, unstable version of the original. Fukuyama calls this process political decay. Think of it like this. It's what happens when a political system's institutions get old, get rigid, and just can't adapt to new problems. Entrenched interests block any attempt at reform, the government gets less and less effective, and people just lose faith. And that, right there, opens the door for corruption or a huge populist backlash. It's like the hero's own body is failing it. But it's right here, at its absolute lowest point, that our hero has a revelation. It suddenly realizes something fundamental about its own nature, something it had maybe forgotten during its long age of triumph. I mean, this is the question, right? This captures the central anxiety of our time. In a world that moves at the speed of light, is democracy's slow, messy, argumentative process a fatal bug in the system? And here's the pivot, the great revelation. What if that thing we all see as a weakness was actually democracy's greatest, most essential strength all along? This is so key. Authoritarian systems, yeah, they can move fast, but their decisions can be incredibly brittle because they're forced on people. Democracies are slower, for sure, but as Fukuyama points out, when they finally do act, that action is built on a solid foundation of public buy-in, which makes it way more resilient and long-lasting. Democracy's strength was never about speed, it was always about adaptability. And that brings us to the end. But here's the thing, unlike a classic hero story, this one doesn't end with a clear victory. It ends with a challenge. It ends with a responsibility that gets passed on to all of us. Our hero doesn't just win automatically. Its survival is an active, ongoing process. It takes really hard work, reforming the institutions that have started to decay, re-engaging as citizens instead of just being consumers, finding smart ways to manage technology, and maybe most important of all, rebuilding the trust that makes the whole thing possible in the first place. So we're left with this final question. The hero's journey isn't over. The story is unfinished. And the crucial thing to realize is that the outcome, well, it isn't predetermined. The responsibility for writing that next chapter, for better or for worse, falls to us.